one or two people will probably join me. Michael Streit. It is my pleasure to speak about my idea of how to cooperate in hybrid teams. And saying hybrid teams, I always mean man and machine. And the machines will predominantly be agentic AI agents. I do not know the value added for you. It's always difficult addressing such a big group, but I am sure that every one of you will leave the room with one at least new perspective, take it home to their company, and will report about what he or she has heard. Fair to say, over the past 2 weeks, I was hiking in the Himalayas. I only returned from Nepal Monday night, and I went up as high as 5,100 meters. It was a stressful time. I only ate rice, almost had a heat stroke at 5,000 meters height. I survived everything. And the first thing, when I returned to Dienstlaken, to my hotel room, I read all of the newsletters, the LinkedIn expert opinions to see whether the slides that I put together in March are still relevant. It's just, isn't that shit? I mean, being offline for only 2 weeks and you're already afraid that what you've created is already obsolete? Accordingly, I combined here in this chart how the tsunami of information, of new updates, has developed over time. What in 2022 took a whole year to disseminate is actually disseminated within a month or maybe even a week. And again, this is totally obsolete again. We have 4.7 now instead of 4.6, further exposition. But what you also see is that the development is exponential. This is what we're confronted with, and it is impossible also for tech experts to actually keep up with this speed on a daily basis. So my recommendation for you to be able to work with the AI updates. So you have to answer 2 questions. First question, when and which distances you look at technical news, it does not make sense to read them on a daily basis, because what you see, the updates, cannot be implemented. It's far too fast. So decide as an individual or as a team, let's look at it once a month, once every 3 months. We do this research, what updates, what developments are new. And the second question you have to answer, how do you handle these? Not every update is of relevance to your team. It's like with the iPhone 15. You take photographs, and now the iPhone 17 is out, and you do not necessarily have to buy it if the iPhone 15 is suitable enough for your holidays and for your work. So, so which model update is how relevant to my context? Let's look at various levels. One thing that I mainly want to describe is AI as a tool, or viewing AI as a coworker. There are extremely many parallels with coworkers, whereas AI is used by asking something. Well, if you have a coworker, then you delegate and the AI does the job for you. But this is not the end of it. Very soon, we will actually view AI as an operating system. This is the AI-first approach. All processes and all structures are thought in such a way that the AI can work on it, or them. This is what I will not cover today, because there's a lot of disruption there. This is the future. But that's not the end of viewing AI as co-workers, but in future we will think everything AI first. Why am I speaking here today? I have looked a lot at AI strategies. I help management to understand this better. I installed 2 startups, one marketing agency, and the other one was a technical platform. And then I entered the pharmaceutical industry. And apart from other positions, I headed the team for data strategy for AI. I did this for 5 years. And now I'm also a business angel, so I invest in startups. I've invested in 6 startups. There are 5 left now. One went bankrupt. Not that bad. I will actually also present some examples for my startups. And I love to travel the world. I've traveled extensively over the past 2 years, and I'm a Deadpool model fan. So the perspectives you will get today represent a mixture between my own background, my corporate time, and what I see with my startups and my customers. Speaking of AI as a coworker, then I think of more than just AI agents. There are different classifications when it comes to the definition of a coworker. There is an interesting categorization depending on the integration degree of a solution of the automation degree. It starts with copilots. Thinking of copilots, we're always thinking of AIs that are applied within one application to improve the functionality, the productivity. We heard it about the data governance systems of Informatica. The Microsoft Copilot was mentioned there. The second category are AI assistants. These are prompted special roles. You probably had custom GPTs or Gemini gems, the Copilot Studio. These allow you to define roles, saying you behave like a distribution expert or strategy expert, and instead of prompting the role afresh each time, you actually create this assistant and can fall back to it time and again. There are also wonderful German solutions to produce such, such as Langdoc and Neuland.ai from Cologne. Langdoc comes from Berlin. I always refer to this because we have a sovereignty problem there. There's so many American suppliers, and we also have super German solutions. The next category are so-called autopilots. This is the classic AI workflows. So created once, process is automated, and this process then actually works without human interference. This is the third category. And the fourth category are the agents. AI agents, highest integration in existing processes and tools, and this is the highest automation degree. Why am I showing the 4 categories? You don't have to take over the same categories, but nobody actually has state-of-the-art definition. But it is important for your company and your teams to know what do I understand by which category. 1 or 2 more examples. Copilots, as in Google Slides, that help you to work on presentations. You could use Gemini to create faster translations better. Then AI assistants. This is the Langdoc GUI. This is my sales assistant that I use for sales pitches, for writing quotes, and for developing sales strategies. I have 15 assistants working for me right now. And the user interface is always the same for each tool. Once you've learned to create an assistant in custom GPT or Gemini gems, then you can do it in Langdoc as well or Copilot Studio. It's always the same GUI. Next example for an autopilot, and that's a very simple workflow. This is what I'm using to create emails, not just any emails, but draft emails for my sales activities. My Outlook is scanned, and I use Spencer here. So within an autopilot, you can actually introduce a new routine to existing pilots. The emails are scanned, whether this is a potential lead or whether this is something else. So the autopilot actually works every 6 hours. And if this is a request, then I get a draft. This is a super simple workflow. At this point, a brief question. Who has ever created such a workflow? Just show of hand, please. Yeah, higher, please. 10 people. All of you, leave the hand up. And remember the faces, and then approach the people during the break. What was the use case? What were the learnings? How did you do it? What I can recommend, the simpler the workflow, the better. For the AI agents, we can see how complicated this gets. But to bring down the obstacle, the threshold, start with workflows that only have 2, 3, or 4 steps. And the last point I want to make, AI agents. We saw what the autopilots are, what the AI agents are, but let's look at the AI agent. How do I define an AI agent? So this is a fact sheet. Just focus on the first layer, the level. AI agents are systems that actually come with the following characteristics. They understand the problem, they can think about the problem. Second step, they plan a potential solution. Third characteristic, they can remember your context, your corporate context, they can understand the context, and fall back on a memory function. Then fourth characteristic, they can act autonomously. And the fifth characteristic is they can reflect on what they did and learn. Unfortunately, we often speak of AI agents, but they are not AI agents because they do not cover the 5 characteristics. So smarter workflows are often referred to as AI agents, which creates misunderstandings and wrong expectations. So this is why I try to categorize this properly. If we speak of viewing AI agents as co-workers, then there's always the question, do I build my own stuff? Do I build my own AI agents or borrow them or actually buy them from third parties? And I've put together 4 different categories. The general AI agents, this is tools that are Replit or Nobel. This is mass suitable AI agents everybody can use. So you can actually create a prototype of an app or website through these general AI agents. But next to it, we also see more personal AI agents such as OpenClaw or Perplexity. They actually cover everything that an AI agent can do. The second category are so-called inbuilt agentic features. So you have existing tools, and within the tools, you have a feature that works or acts like an AI agent. What did we have yesterday? We had Adobe, I think. The Mate was introduced by Adobe Tools. And I will also show you an example for Cursor. And the third agency are off-the-shelf agents. You do not always have to build your own AI agent. There are tools out there, such as Beam. And if you say, for instance, well, hey, I need online marketing campaign manager, or I have an online solution that I need, this is a plug-and-play solution. So off the shelf, you can go for the customer solution agent and Beam, connect the data to my tools, and you basically pay per use. And if you no longer use it or need it, then you return it. And the last category is the so-called self-built agents. This is when you say, well, in my systems, I will want to have a certain control and sovereignty, and I want to build my own tools, such as make.com or MNT. And I've brought along an example for general AI agent, Cloud Coworker.
So in the past, I did podcasts, and I also published short videos. I want to start doing that again. And for that, I used Claude, and I said, I want to get cracking again as a podcaster, and Claude Coworker then came up with the following. You can see the initial individual features. So it uploaded my memory, it understood my customer segments, my strategy, my next priorities. All this has been uploaded. Then the planning stage on the right side, you can see the progress. So Claude says, for Michael to be successful as a podcaster, I need to prepare the following things: a podcast concept, the audience, and you can see they work a lot with skills. Half a year ago, you would have had 50 to 100 assistants that work for you. But if you see AI as an operating system in the future, then we only have a handful of agents that work with up to 20 skills. Skills are a bit like predefined capabilities and processes. You can call them SOPs if you like. And the agent decides according to the requests which skills are required to implement the predefined process. And the last step is the part of taking action. So the entire podcast concept is now in my Notion page. And if I now say I want to record a podcast, then the skill is being activated. They look for an audience. The background of the audience is researched according to predefined questions. And then I can access this in the Notion and start with my podcast. So that was an example for a general AI agent. For inbuilt agentic features, I brought along a startup example. I'm an investor in this startup called Streit. It's an AI platform that generates content. For example, if you say you want to generate leads, and I have 5 employees who want to regularly put posts on the web, then the AI can generate posts according to the company model. Streit itself, as an AI company, needs to be very fast in developing new features. They work with a small team of 6 people, including 3 software developers. But 80% of the code of Streit are now actually generated for the company by AI. So the 6 employees they have can take on the workload of 10 employees. The whole thing is done with Cursor, the AI code editor. This is what it looks like. It's quite simple. Here you see the cursor surface on the left-hand side with the current code. And as a developer, I can now do in the agentic window, you can see on the top right which feature you want to develop, and the inbuilt agent then plans, which you can see on the bottom of the page, how this feature would have to be developed. You can then approve it, and once it's approved, it's implemented, and then the code is in this repository, and here you can release it. Next example, off-the-shelf agents. As I already said, you can borrow Coworkers for AI. Here we have a very popular agent. He's called Devin. He's a software engineer, which you can integrate. And the example, Devin shows you the project management tool of Streit. It's linear, but you can also have Jira or whatever you like. And this project management tool, here somebody from marketing said a user would like as a feature a feed for followed creators only. So that's just a standard ticket in the project management tool. And Christoph, the developer, now opened the ticket. And in the ticket, he just marked Devin and instructed Devin to create a first draft for implementation. And this is exactly the same process with an AI agent as you would have with a human employee. A colleague would open the ticket, and then you would say, Peter, for example, show us how you can implement this process. So Devin works in the same way as a human. Devin goes on and does an investigation of how to implement this. And here you can see the AI already is an effective co-worker in the interaction between machine and human. This is another example I brought along. Pandal is a nutrition company for protein shakes, collagen, and so on. And he's a professional. Previously, he was a professional athlete, and now we have Florian Hambücher also on board, which is great. they get around 1,000 customer requests per month. So, for example, a customer placing an order, asking, when am I going to receive my protein shake? Has it already been dispatched? When is it going to be delivered? And these kind of requests, they get on a monthly basis, thousands thereof. And for that, we developed a customer service agent who looks at all the emails, understands attachments, understands context behind it, looks at the email history of the particular customer, and then it also even accesses the DHL tool. So if there's a tracking number in the email, then it checks the delivery status with the DHL tool. It can also look up Shopify and track the order. And based on this, it then drafts an email for the team. The human then checks whether the email can be sent like this or needs to be amended. But with that, the team saves an awful lot of time. Okay, that was a lot of information based on the examples. So now is the question, where do you start? How do you continue? So I brought along this image to show you how these steps could be taken in a smart manner. So depending on the productivity, whether you want to increase your productivity with AI, you need to start at the basic situation prior to using AI. And what I see very often, and this is also supported by data, people start to chat with ChatGPT. And very often productivity levels decline. You can see this in large companies that boast about adoption rates of 20%, for example, and who say 800 of our employees regularly use Copilot. But the truth is, the productivity is not increased because people play around with ChatGPT and have discussions with Copilot on certain matters and why they're not being understood. So we need to differentiate. Only by using AI, productivity is not automatically increased. You need to take this curve step by step to increase your productivity. Even when you're at a level where you have learned good prompting, you're not at a point where you're reducing your time and effort. If, for example, you use the wrong prompt for the wrong problem, you haven't increased your productivity levels, but you're happy for having written a good quality prompt. But as a company, you should realize the value behind it. It gets exciting and interesting when you have predefined roles and you actually work with your AI assistant. And then the following step where you increase productivity is when you integrate autopilots in your workflows. And a very important factor is when you, in the early beginnings, don't just start with AI agents, don't be too quick to work with AI agents. It is absolutely valuable to take this step by step. First, set up your assistant, then integrate your assistant in the autopilot, generate your first experiences, and then you can get cracking with the complete AI solutions. We can see that there's still a great potential between the areas where we could apply AI and where it's actually used. This is a graphic put together by Controfic, and here you can see the potentials in the different industries and disciplines. The red marked area shows how many users already use AI applications. So as you can see, there's still great potential to look at this potential in terms of AI co-workers. I would like to work with the following comparison. If we onboard a new employee or onboard AI, from my point of view, it's a very similar process. Before you employ a new member of staff, you ask yourself what roles and responsibilities this person should take on. Where do we need support in the company? Where do we need to fill capacities? And the same question you should ask for AI agents. So once you have defined which position needs to be filled, which responsibilities need to be covered, then it's the same process for a human or the AI agent. You need to explain to the new onboard, be it an AI agent or a human, you need to explain the company, you need to explain the job, you need to give access to the email system. So there are no differences between human and machine. To finish off my presentation, I want to look at the following 3 aspects, role and responsibilities to start with. What I often experience in my customers is that the decision is being taken too quickly to have a customer support agent. They need to think about the identification of the requirements first. And I would really encourage all of you to take the following 6 steps. First of all, in your company, you should create a general AI awareness in your company. Let's call it AI literacy or AI fluency. So you need to train your employees to provide the basic knowledge regarding AI. That's the crucial first step. Then the second step is identification of the problem at hand. So maybe you look at the business units or the project or the process to understand your bottlenecks, to understand your opportunities and pain points. And after you have identified your problems, you can then take the next step where you define the relevant AI capabilities to find solutions for your problems. Once that's done, you understand your problems and you can, based on this, define your use cases where, for example, automation might be a benefit. Once you've identified your use cases, you need to prioritize. A few months ago, I worked with a company that had a whole lot of use cases, up to 100 use cases in their company, but they couldn't start working on the use cases because they couldn't decide which one to prioritize. So this is absolutely important to have an efficient prioritization list. And once you prioritized 2 or 3 or 4 for an implementation roadmap, then you can start with designing your AI solutions and prototypes. So let's look at this in more detail. First of all, the problem identification. So you could take the following approach. You look at the specific functions for either your marketing department, sales department, or product development, and then you look at the individual tasks for your employees, the processes behind it, the work streams, and the project. The more clearly this has been identified and the more clearly you understand the required steps, the better your use cases and your prioritization. For example, let's take a B2B SaaS company that works on user activation. They sell software, for example, and very often it doesn't end with the software sales, but with the actual use of the software by the user. So, for example, we could have login videos for the customer to start with the software. And when we look at this process, we can have a look at the pain points of the user, any bottlenecks. So that's important homework. And when you manage to do your homework, then you've already done 80% or 90% a better job than other companies. Building an agent is not the problem and is not difficult, but understanding the problem at hand is the crucial starting point, and many companies don't invest the time and effort that's required. Okay, so now we have 3 or 4 use cases, and now we need to prioritize them. The following chart might give you some input on how to deal with those use cases. So we've got 8 use cases here in the bundles that you have identified, and now you can look at the potential use of the individual use case. For example, customer experience, cost savings, increased turnover, for example, which you show on the x-axis. Then on the y-axis, you can look at the feasibility, the potential to implement this, the availability of data, and the risks, for example. The third dimension is the size of the bubbles, and the third level is the practicability. So if we have a small bubble, for example, then this use case is not really practical. And if it's large, then it says it's simple to implement, which means, for example, it's easy to train the member of staff and the solution is not very difficult in its application. So once you've assessed all this, you can then choose the 3 best use cases. For example, which use case would you choose based on this chart? 3? Anyone else? 7? Yeah, that's a good choice. Anyone else? Would you choose a 3rd case, maybe? 1? Interesting. I would actually go for 3. Those 3. The blue one on the left in first position. Why did I choose this one? Well, if you've never really been doing a big implementation in the past, then you should start with something that's easy to implement. Even if the use is not at the highest scale, then the feasibility is at a very high scale and the adaptability. And of course, you and your staff want to have a good experience with AI and to gain knowledge. Then we're at the level on the onboarding. As I already said, onboarding of machines and humans should not be any different. If you employ a new member of staff, the first thing you do on their first day at work, you explain them the processes of the company and their roles. So you introduce the company's strategy, the team, the roles and responsibilities, and the way you explain this to an employee. You should also explain this to an AI agent, covering the following 3 areas. We differentiate between general company information and specific tasks. And we've already learned that context and data are the crucial framework for everything, and I agree with that. So what we need to do now, we need to explain the strategy of the company, the brand guidelines, the products, the role structure, and very few companies have a clear definition of this, but the AI needs this to be able to work. And then we have the specific context of the roles and responsibility, where we work with templates and SOPs, but also semantic aspects. Then we have the data strategy. The saying goes, there is no AI without IA, so we need to have the right data architecture and structure. We've heard about this in the previous presentations. And the last point is guidance and governance. You should have a very clear definition of the roles, of the responsibilities. If you employ an AI agent, you need to know who's responsible for that AI agent, who's the human in the loop, and how does that work? What's the authority architecture? So how much authority does the AI have to make decisions? Where are the limits? The second onboarding time part is where the AI gets a laptop to work with. That leads us to the issue of tools and systems. So yesterday we heard about clouds and setting up their own MPC server, for example. And that's the question, how can you ensure access to software for the individual AI agent? So access to tools, further developments, and again, human and machine require the same processes. Humans work with coffee, AI agents work with tokens. So it's very important to calculate in your budget the costs for tokens, because sometimes AI agents use tokens in the amount of 500 euros a day. So this is something that needs to be calculated in your budget for the overall strategy and implementation. So you have a clear understanding of how much these AI agents are going to cost. And I believe that in the future, once each and every one of us has an AI agent for our private life, then the costs of tokens will develop accordingly. 3 general rules that everyone should really take on board. Skill security is more important than job security. In a world where we increasingly are fearful of losing our jobs, I would really like to encourage you to leave this thought behind and to be so entangled in your job titles. Take a different approach and think about how your company will develop in the next few years, how your team will develop, and what skills are going to be required in the new world. This is how you should think. And based on this, engage in further development and training. So don't be too attached to your job title. Think about what skills you should have and could have in the future. Another important thing is the understanding that you need to be the architect and not the builder. If the AI autonomously sets up processes, then in the future, you won't have a competitive edge as a person. But where you have a unique competitive factor is if you think within the system, if you have a systemic approach for you yourself, for your team, for your company, where you need to understand where the human is required and where the AI offers added value. Think as an architect. And the last point I want to leave behind for you is die on your own sword. We see so many restructurizations in companies and restructurizations that lead to the loss of jobs. If in your company no restructurization is planned at the moment, then you have a position of strength. Don't wait for something to happen. Don't wait for a restructurization to take place. Look at your own processes. Look at your own jobs and take charge of your own position. If you, on an individual basis, determine your jobs and your tasks, and if you say, for example, these 10 tasks, of these 10 tasks, 3 could be automated, then you take charge and you are the driver for automation in your company. And once you started thinking like this, it's not about keeping your job. You develop into being a specialist and expert in the implementation of AI. So don't just sit around, twiddle your thumbs and wait. Take charge. Be your own driver. Okay, that leads me to the end of my presentation. Just some final words. If you need some support for keynote talks, one-on-one coachings, do approach me. And you can also use the LinkedIn QR code to connect.